The package arrives at 3 a.m. and it's 200 grams light. You know this before you open it because you've done this 100 times and the weight is wrong in your hands the moment you lift it from the drop point behind the diner on Shermack. Somebody skimmed. Somebody always skims. The question is whether it was the mule who carried it across the border with it taped to her thighs for 11 hours, or the distributor who handed it off in the parking garage on Tuesday, or someone in between that you haven't identified yet. You have 48 hours to figure out which one. Because the man who sent this package is not the kind of man who accepts apologies. And somewhere in your chest, under the training and the discipline and the thing you've become over the last decade, you feel something that might once have been called fear. You don't call it that anymore. You call it information. Information that tells you the next 48 hours are going to require every version of yourself you've ever been. If you've ever wondered what it actually feels like to live inside a drug empire, not watch it in a documentary, not follow it in a Netflix series, but to inhabit it, to be it, this is that. F&B Dude POV explores the systems that make people into things. Stick around, because here's what nobody tells you. There isn't one role in this world. There are dozens, and almost every single one of them starts with a person who isn't a criminal, who has a reason, who has a logic, who makes a decision that seems, at the time, completely survivable. Let's go through all of them. You are 17 years old, and you live on the south side of a city that has already decided what you're worth. The school you attend has a 34% graduation rate. The nearest grocery store is 2 miles away. Your mother works doubles at a nursing home and comes home smelling like antiseptic and exhaustion, and there is never quite enough of anything. Not food, not space, not quiet, not future. You're not stupid. You know this. You can do the math of your own life, and the answer it keeps producing is the same one it's been producing for generations of people who looked like you and lived where you lived. Then Marcus, who is 19 and drives a car that shouldn't exist in this zip code, asks you if you want to make $200 for 2 hours of work. The work is simple. You stand on a corner. You watch for police. If you see a patrol car, you send a text. One letter. Z. That's it. You don't touch product. You don't handle money. You just watch. Marcus calls it being a lookout, but you already know what it is. You've known what it is since you were 12. You've just never been the one standing on the corner before. $200 for 2 hours. Your mother makes $14.50 an hour. You take the job. This is where it starts. Not with violence. Not with a cinematic moment of moral collapse. With arithmetic. With a 17-year-old doing math that his school and his city and his economy made inevitable. And arriving at the only answer the equation allowed. You are not a bad person. You are a person the system has handed a very specific set of options, and you have chosen the one that pays. The lookout is the bottom of a structure so vast and so layered that from where you're standing, you can't even see the top. You are one of dozens of lookouts in this city alone. Above you is the runner, who actually moves the product from the stash house to the corner. Above the runner is the street lieutenant, who manages 3 or 4 corners and handles the cash and reports up to the block captain. Above the block captain is someone you've never met and whose name you've never heard. And above that person is another person. And above that person is an accountant who has never set foot in your neighborhood and never will. The machine runs on hierarchy and on the guarantee that each level knows as little as possible about the levels above it. This is not inefficiency. This is design. This is what makes the whole structure almost impossible to dismantle from the outside. You arrest the corner boys. The corners get restocked in 72 hours. You arrest the lieutenant. Another one is promoted before the end of the week. The system is not the people in it. The people are replaceable. The system is the point. You run lookout for 3 months before Marcus asks you if you want to start running. By then, you've learned the rhythms of the corner the way you once learned the rhythms of a classroom. You know which customers come at what times. You know which patrol car does its sweep at 6 p.m. and which detective drives the unmarked Impala that parks on the cross street every Thursday. You've learned that the business has rules, and that the rules are, in their own way, logical. Don't get high on your own supply. Don't talk on phones. Don't bring the work home. Don't flash. These are not random commandments. They're survival protocols refined over decades of trial and catastrophic error. Running pays $500 a week, cash, no taxes. Marcus gives you a prepaid phone and a schedule. You learn where the stash is. You learn how to hold the product in a way that doesn't look like holding product. You learn how to pass something in a handshake so naturally that even the person you're passing it to barely registers. It happened. You are 17 years old and you are acquiring a skill set that is remarkably sophisticated and almost completely untransferable to legal employment. That's not an accident either. For 2 years, this is your life. You run, you learn, you watch. Your mother thinks you're working at the car wash on Halstead, which you are, 3 days a week for cover. You put $200 a week in the house, quietly, without explanation. And your mother doesn't ask questions because the lights stay on and the refrigerator stays full. And some mercies in this world are ones you choose not to examine too closely. You are 19 when the street lieutenant gets picked up on a weapons charge and someone needs to step into that role immediately. Marcus recommends you. Not because he likes you, though he might, but because you've been reliable for 2 years without a single mistake. Reliable is the rarest currency in this economy. The lieutenant manages product, manages people, manages money, and manages the inevitable frictions that arise when you're running a cash business staffed by people under enormous stress in an environment with no legal dispute resolution. The frictions are the hardest part. You are 19 years old and you are now expected to adjudicate conflicts between grown men who carry guns as a matter of course. The first time you have to make an example of someone who stole from the corner, you don't do it yourself. You tell Marcus. Marcus handles it. You don't ask what handling it means. You go home and you play video games for 2 hours and you tell yourself that you didn't know and that not knowing makes it different. It doesn't make it different. You knew. Everyone knew. That's why it worked. By 22, you are a block captain. You are managing 4 corners, 12 people, and approximately $40,000 a week in revenue. You have a system for everything. Cash gets counted 3 times and reported up the chain the same night it's collected. Product gets weighed before it's broken down and weighed again before it hits the street. You've learned from watching what happens to people who skim, who lie, who get creative with the numbers. You don't get creative. You're precise. You're professional. And here is where the story fractures into its other selves. Because the drug empire is not just its street operation. It's a system with organs. You are the chemist. You have a master's degree in organic chemistry from the University of Illinois that you never finished because your student loans hit $80,000 and the research stipend you were promised got cut in a budget reallocation, and you were 26 years old with debt and a skill set and a contact from college who knew someone who needed someone who understood synthesis. The first job is for fentanyl analogs. Legal, technically. Gray area chemistry for research compounds. Paid cash through an LLC that doesn't exist on any database you'd recognize. You tell yourself it's pharmaceutical research and you're not entirely wrong. Then the requests get more specific, more potent. The gray area becomes a line. You cross it because the line moved so slowly you almost didn't notice it moving. And because by the time you noticed, you had paid off $60,000 of your debt and your daughter was enrolled in a private school in Evanston, and the mortgage was manageable for the first time since you bought the house. You are not a drug manufacturer in the story you tell yourself. You are a chemist who made some choices in a broken system. The difference between those two things is the story. The story is all you have. You are the money launderer. You are a CPA with 17 years of experience in a small accounting firm in the western suburbs that does taxes for restaurants and car dealerships and dry cleaners, and one client that your senior partner brought in 8 years ago, who has since become 30% of your firm's revenue. You know what the money is? You've always known. The deposits pattern wrong. The cash ratios don't reflect the business models. You've been around long enough to know what laundering looks like, and what it looks like is your firm's most reliable client. You've restructured it beautifully. Real estate transactions, shell companies across 4 states, a legitimate construction firm that contracts itself, a restaurant group that loses money on paper and shouldn't exist and keeps opening new locations. Your senior partner is the one with the relationship. You are the one with the architecture. You have never met the person whose money this is. You don't want to. You have a 401k and 2 kids in college and a practice that will be worth something when you retire, and the math, as always, is the math. You are the distributor. You came up from the street, same as the block captain, but you had a different opportunity at 24. A connect in Guadalajara who needed a reliable American side operator and found you through 3 layers of introduction. Now you are the middle of the supply chain, the node that everyone in the city passes through without knowing your name. You move weight, not grams, kilograms, dozens at a time. You don't think of yourself as a drug dealer because you haven't touched retail products since you were 20. You think of yourself as logistics, distribution, supply chain management. You have, in a very real and specific way, the same job as a regional operations director for a consumer goods company, and you have thought about this comparison more than once, usually when you're in a meeting with the people above you, discussing territory and margins and the competitive landscape. The comparison doesn't comfort you the way it used to. You are the corrupt detective, 14 years on the force, the last 6 in narcotics. You started with good intentions. Most of them do. The first time someone offered you something, you said no. The second time, you said no. The third time, it was $2,000 in a plain envelope left in your car, and you were 2 months from having your water shut off, and your ex-wife was taking you back to court for more child support, and you sat with that envelope in your lap in a parking garage in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon, and you thought about everything you'd given to this job and everything it had given back to you, which was 14 years of trauma and a bad knee and a pension that looked different every time you checked it. You kept the envelope. You told yourself it was a one-time thing. It was not a one-time thing. It is never a one-time thing. Within 18 months, you are managing which corners get raided and when, which investigations get enough resources to go anywhere and which ones quietly stall, which informants get burned and which ones stay useful. You are not working for the drug operation. You tell yourself that. You are working for yourself. The drug operation just happens to be the one paying for information that you happen to have. The distinction is moral origami, and you are very good at folding it. You are the lawyer, not the mob lawyer in movies. Nothing that theatrical. You are a 41-year-old defense attorney with a practice in the loop that handles, among other things, the legal needs of people connected to the distribution network. Your clients don't tell you things. They know better, and so do you. What you provide is expertise, how charges get structured, what evidence means, where the holes in a prosecution are, what cooperation looks like, and when it helps and when it destroys. You have never suborned perjury. You have never fabricated evidence. You have never done anything that would get you disbarred if the bar examined your files tomorrow. What you have done is provide exceptional representation to people who do exceptional harm, and you have billed them $600 an hour for the privilege. The law doesn't ask you to care what your clients do. The law asks you to represent them zealously. You are a zealous representative. You sleep fine. You are the mule. You are a 43-year-old woman from Culiacan whose son owed a debt to people you do not say no to. The first trip was coerced. The second trip was survival. By the third trip, you were being paid, and the payment was enough that your son's debt was cleared and there was money left over that felt, for the first time in years, like breathing room. You carry the product inside your body, in your luggage, under false panels and suitcases that are not yours. You have crossed the border 9 times. Every single time, your heart does something that isn't a normal heartbeat for the entire duration of customs processing. You have never been caught. You don't know if that's skill or statistics. You've stopped thinking about the difference because thinking about it uses energy you don't have. You are the cartel accountant. You are 29 years old and you work in a building in Mexico City that processes, in one form or another, somewhere between $800 million and $1.2 billion a year. Not all of it drug money, some of it construction, some of it agricultural, some of it legitimate in ways that a forensic accountant could verify. The mixing is intentional. You track where everything goes and you make the numbers tell the story the people above you need them to tell. You are very good at this. You studied at the Autonomous University of Mexico and you were recruited, not unlike a Wall Street recruit, by people who knew what they were looking for. The office has good coffee. The salary is $200,000 a year tax-free, which is something the tax-paying version of this job could never touch. You have thought about leaving. Everyone in this building has thought about leaving. Leaving is not a straightforward concept in this context. You stay. You open the spreadsheet. You make the numbers work. Now let's come back to the block captain. Back to the person on the street who's been running those 4 corners for 3 years. At 25, something changes. A 14-year-old boy on one of your corners overdoses. He is not one of your people. He is a customer. He bought something from one of your runners behind the school, a Tuesday afternoon in October, and by 9 p.m. he is in the ICU at Rush with his mother outside the room making sounds you never want to hear again. He survives. Just. He is 14 years old and his brain may or may not be the same brain it was on Monday. And this is a thing that happened because of a product that moved through your supply chain and was sold at a corner you manage. You hear about it the next day. You don't shut down the corner. This is the moment that most people, watching from the outside, mark as the point of no return. And they're right. But what they miss is what it feels like from inside that moment. It doesn't feel like a moral choice because you stopped making moral choices about this work years ago. The calculus disappeared so gradually that you can't locate the specific Tuesday it vanished. What you feel, sitting with this information about a 14-year-old boy, is something closer to cost calculation. What is the cost of shutting down? What is the cost of not shutting down? What do the people above you need from you right now? And what does answering that need require you to do or not do? The corner stays open. You tell yourself, I didn't know how old he was. I can't know how old every customer is. I didn't sell it to him. I don't control what my runners do in every specific transaction. All of these things are partially true. None of them are the truth. The truth is that a child put something in his body that moved through your organization and nearly died, and the corner is still open because the corner being open is what you are, and you don't know how to be anything else. By 27, you are moving up again. The structure above you has thinned through attrition, arrest, and one incident 3 years ago that you do not discuss, and that restructured several relationships permanently. You are now closer to the top of the street operation than you ever expected to be, with visibility into the supply chain, into the financial flows, into the distribution network that connects this city to 3 others. You know names you're not supposed to know. You've been in rooms you're not supposed to have been in. You understand, for the first time, with complete clarity, the whole machine. what it costs, what it takes, what it does to every person it touches. The lookout, the runner, the chemist, the mule, the accountant, the detective, the lawyer, the distributor, the customer, and the boy in the ICU whose mother made sounds you never want to hear again. You understand all of it. You stay, not because you can't leave. The myth of the drug empire is that it's a roach motel, that people can't exit. Sometimes that's true. Sometimes the violence is real and the exits are genuinely closed. But sometimes the trap is subtler. Sometimes you stay because you have no legal income history that would satisfy a landlord or an employer. Sometimes you stay because the life you've built, the respect, the resources, the identity, exists entirely within this structure, and dismantling it means becoming nobody from nowhere with a criminal history and a skill set that the legitimate economy has no interest in purchasing. Sometimes you stay because the people who love you are connected to this life, and extracting yourself means extracting them too, which means explaining things you've never explained and asking them to bear costs they never agreed to. Sometimes you stay because you've been doing this for 10 years and you are good at it, and being good at something, even something like this, is a form of self-worth that the human brain is not equipped to simply set down. The machine doesn't need you to be evil. It doesn't need you to want this. It just needs you to keep doing your job. And you are very, very good at your job. Somewhere right now, a 17-year-old is standing on a corner doing the math of his own life. Somewhere a chemist is telling herself it's gray area research. Somewhere a detective is sitting in a parking garage with an envelope in his lap, deciding that this time is different from every time before, which means this time is exactly the same. Somewhere a mule is in a customs line with her heart doing that thing that isn't a normal heartbeat. Somewhere a 41-year-old lawyer is billing $600 an hour to keep the machine running by the letter of the law. Somewhere a 14-year-old is in an ICU and his mother is making sounds that nobody who hears them ever fully forgets. And the corner is still open. The package at 3 a.m. is 200 grams light. You know it before you open it. You know what happens next. You know what you'll do about it. You know what making an example looks like and who will do it and what it will cost the person who skimmed. You open the package anyway, because someone has to, because the machine requires it, because you are, at this point, less a person making choices and more a function that the system is running. The machine didn't corrupt you. It didn't need to. It just needed you to start. The rest it handled on its own, one rationalization at a time, one step at a time, one corner at a time, one envelope at a time, one number in a spreadsheet at a time, one gray area synthesis at a time, one border crossing at a time, one closed investigation at a time, until everyone inside it is doing exactly what the machine needs and calling it something else. That's how empires work. Not with monsters, with people. Ordinary, understandable, cornered people making the only calculations their circumstances allow. And that's the part that should keep you up at night.